Kia ora no tātou, te pāri o te kaunihira o Toi Moana, e mihi ana ki a koutou I raro I te māmai o te pauri o te mate karauna, e karaki a poto mō tātou, kei koe tātou. E te atua nui tōnu, ko mātou e nei inoi atu nei ki a koe. Kia tau mā te maramatanga ki a mātou whakarite mō tēnei rā. Arahina hoki mātou e ai te oranga tōnu ki ngā ahuatanga katoa a ngā tangata ki tō mātou rohi whānui tōnu. Amen. I roto I te reo tuarua I nai nei. Almighty God, we ask that you give us wisdom in the decisions we make here today and give us guidance in working with our regional communities to promote their social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being. Amen. And I hope, Mr. Chair, that we can share that kariki amongst us all, and in the course of time, everybody can participate. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Councillor White. Apologies, we have no apologies. Public forum, there is no public forum. There is no items, so we don't have to accept any late items of business. I understand there is no general business to be brought forward in the context of this meeting. And agenda item 6, confidential business to be transferred into the open. I understand there is none as well. So declarations of conflict of interest in terms of this agenda. Are there any councillors who wish to declare conflict of interests? There would appear to be not, but I'd just ask you to note that Councillor Thompson and Councillor Crosby are directors of Quayside Holdings, and we're having a report from Quayside Holdings later in the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, could I also give notice I may have to apologise around 10:30?
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. That's just for a period of time, it's not for the rest of the meeting, is it? Or
it would be for the rest of the meeting if it's not completed.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item is 8.1, Regional Council Minutes, the 24th of March. Can I have a confirmation they're true and correct with one addition? So that's minute item 6.2. Adoption of the proposed flood protection drainage bylaws, and we would like to add Councillor Bill Clark as a member of that hearings panel to that. So I'll move they be a true and correct record with that alteration. Do I have a second?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Mr. Von Duddleson. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. So in this terms of this technology, I suppose you better yell out because I can't see everybody raising their hands. So if there's any objection, please just raise your hand and I'll see if I can pick it up in terms of the flags. So the first report, agenda item number 9, is the COVID Essential Services Emergency Response Report. And we have Sarah Munston and Glenn Clarkin will do a presentation.
And
so
just
Sarah
before that,
and Glenn. Sorry,
through you, Chair, just before that, I just recognise this is extremely difficult times and that we have provided you with information in 2 agenda packs. And so we will, and we have a number of presentations to give as well. So if you bear with us in terms of just working through the technology, I do want to say at the start of the meeting how very proud I am of the staff in terms of what they have delivered over the last few weeks. And that's reflected in the agenda for you today and the presentations that staff have provided. How we plan to work as staff is we are all on audio, except if somebody is presenting or needs to answer one of your questions. But just my key message is that it may take us a little while to move through all the papers and presentations, given that we're doing this in a very different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. So Fiona, can you just manage Sarah and Glenn, because we're not going to be able to see them, are we?
Through you, Chair, we can pop them up, and they also they can also do a presentation. The presentation that Glenn has provided, we'd also want to do in the recovery section of the agenda. Sarah, do you want to add any further words?
No, that's fine, Fiona.
Really happy to answer councillors' questions on the paper that starts on page 21 of your main agenda. Through you, Chair, I can see that Councillors Crosby, Councillors Winters and Councillors Nees have questions.
See, I can't see any of those, Fiona. They're not coming up on my iPad. So you might have to marshal through those questions. They were before, but they're not now.
Okay. Through you, Chair, if you're happy for me, I can direct you to which councillors have questions.
Yes, will
Councillor
you please?
Winters, Councillor Nees and Councillor Van Dadelson.
So of our main agenda, we're on page, would you say 19 and 20, Fiona?
21.
21.
Essential services and emergency response.
Yep. Okay, where we go?
Councillor Winters, you had a question?
Oh yeah, good morning everybody. Just on the bottom of page 22, we're talking about controlling lake levels. Now normally I'd be out and about looking at lake levels right across the Rotorua district. So are our lake levels, and it comes back to that level 2 scenario for Fiona of you making a decision about low water levels. So are all our lakes in the consented range for their lake levels? And because last time I saw Lake Rotorua was very, very low. Have they come up, and are they all in the consented lake range?
Through you, Chair, I'll ask Chris to answer that question in detail. That is my understanding that they are in their consented range.
Yes, sorry Fiona or Councillor Winters, I'd have to check up on that if Rotorua is low. I know we have had some recent rainfall and Sarah may be able to help actually with that, but I'm not aware of any issues. I haven't heard any complaints from people.
As long as you're not aware of any issues, I'm happy about that, because normally I'd be bringing them to you, but because we're on lockdown, I can't bring them to you because I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nees, then Rose.
Thank you. Since this paper was written, we've had a lot more detailed guidance around level 3, and we expect to hear on Monday what the government's proposing with regard to moving out of level 4. I just wonder, has the executive team done work on what level 3 will look like for us? And if so, what changes may we see?
Through you, Chair, for the Council, we are in a very privileged position in terms of our technology that we can have full Council meetings. So we have not had to activate the Emergency Committee. We are planning on doing all the committee meetings that you have in your calendar, but they will continue to be Zoom meetings. Level 3 is a limit on the number of people who can gather. So we will still work our meetings this way through level 3. It may be that the chair of the meeting can come in and be supported by staff in the building, but we are planning to continue with Zoom meetings because they are working well for us. For staff, we have a range of principles that we're working through in terms of which staff need to come into the office. Almost all of our staff are working from home, and it's working very, very well. And that includes our Group Emergency Coordination Centre, with the Group Controller being in the building, but most staff being working from home. We will continue those arrangements, but we will be looking at if there are other things that we can do in level 3 to support our communities, we will do them. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Fiona, and good morning, everybody. So I'm just looking at, I'm on, what page are we? Page 22, in the essential services for the regional council. The sampling and analysis of drinking water for public safety, as well as, where is it? The maintenance for biosecurity. Of course, that would require at some point staff going out. So is the right measures being taken to protect our staff whilst out on the field?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. We have full controls in place. We're very pleased in terms of how our health and safety regimes are working. And I know that Sarah can provide more information because a number of her staff are out in the field, whether they're responding to oil spills or do compliance. So Sarah, do you want to provide a little bit more detail?
Yes, through you, Chair. We've had to think really carefully about what services we do need to provide and how to keep staff safe. So we are requiring staff to only travel singly in a vehicle to get to incidents. For the water sampling and analysis of freshwater drinking, staff are doing that on their own and making sure that they are keeping all precautions when they're interacting with people. Our lab has had to move into a different way of working. We would normally have 8 to 10 people in the lab at any given time running samples and analysis. We are only having 2 people in the lab now, one on either side of the building to keep them safe, and providing emergency drinking water analysis where TAs are having issues. So we're absolutely keeping staff safe through that.
Councillor Van Dadelson, you have your hand up.
Yes, page 25, talking about regulatory services and compliance. My question is to Sarah. We've had many complaints for many months now about the pet processing factory in Koromiko Street, and there is no progress being made. I know we're in lockdown, but this is continuing. I last had repugnant smells as I walked along by Harvey Norman's yesterday, so it's still continuing. How, this is a compliance issue, and I know we're in lockdown, but how are we going to move this issue forward when it's been an issue now for at least 6 months?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's certainly an issue that has intensified through the lockdown period, with a number of pet food manufacturers continuing to operate when people remain at home. We had initially advised our staff, we've got a list of priorities that they are being called out to. They continue to respond to our 0800 pollution hotline, and odour issues were not one of the priorities that we were expecting staff to respond to. But given the number of complaints that we have received, they have been out, they have been talking to all of the manufacturers, and we have also in the last 2 weeks started a proactive odour monitoring piece of work. It's not just the industry you're referring to, there's a number throughout the region. So we have staff doing odour monitoring 3 times a day around those areas, particularly where we know that with people in lockdown, people in their homes, they are being exposed to those smells a lot more than they had in the past.
Is it possible to establish a facility to monitor that odouring on a real-time basis on site? And we've done that in the Port Industrial area, where we have an air shed, and I know for air pollution it's very expensive. I'm not sure for odour, but with the amount of ongoing stuff, I think we need compliance, and it really should be the user or the polluter who pays for that monitoring, because this is just going on for too long, and it's not reasonable for residents to have to put up with.
Right, thank you, Mr. Van Dadelson. I've got Mr. Councillor Thurston, and Councillor Rose, and Councillor Eighties.
Thank you, Chairman. Fiona, in your preamble, you made some comments around meeting procedure in Category 3. Trying to pull together the Regional Transport Committee on the 6th of April. Do you foresee a mechanism by which it could be undertaken by Zoom from Regional House, in particular the chairing of it? I'm thinking of trying to coordinate the mayors and chairs and all the community reps that we have from right across the Bay of Plenty, but would there be an opportunity under Category 3 for, say, myself as chairman to chair it on Zoom with the appropriate staff from Regional House?
Through you, Chair, yes, and you'll note that you had a full council meeting in level 3 just before lockdown, and how we worked that was that we had councillors coming into the offices Whakatane and Rotorua and Tauranga, and we limited the number of people in each room to less than 10. And that is the key requirement for level 3. So we will absolutely try and maximise how we can do it for you, Councillor Thurston. The Regional Transport Committee meeting will go ahead and we'll try and make it as easy for you as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My second question is just in regards to page 25 and looking at the works on stage 7 floodway for the Rangataiki River. I'm just wanting to know how many, do we have like a estimated amount of staff that we have working on that, whether that's from home or on site?
Contractors.
So contractors, okay.
I can respond, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We have one staff member who is lives close by, actually, who's supervising the contractors. So he travels alone and follows the full safety procedures, as the CEO mentioned before.
Awesome. And the second question, the third question I've got there is in regards to organisations such as Māori organisations, iwi hapu. How much discussion do we have? And there is a part on that in the, I think it's page 24. How many communications do we have with these organisations and with iwi and hapu as well?
So those communications are happening on all sorts of work, Councillor Rose. We have very early on, I sent a letter to all of the iwi CEOs and chairs, informing them of our essential services that we're open for business and how to contact us. I know that in one of the agenda items on recovery, we can talk more about that. There are updates that you're getting nearly on a daily basis through the Group Emergency Coordination Centre in terms of how we're supporting our iwi partners and Māori in terms of responding to COVID-19. So it would be almost all of the business, as we normally do, having conversations with our iwi and community groups. It has been limiting in terms of what we can do face-to-face, but certainly the dialogue is continuing as best it can through Zoes and phone calls.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Eighties.
Kia ora, Chair. Tēnā rā tātou. I note on page 24, actually following on from Councillor Rose, at the bottom of 4.1, staff are finalising the freshwater Māori relationship and engagement strategy. Councillors may remember at the strategy and policy hui on the 18th of February when we withdrew PC9, that a motion was put forward that staff were to seek direction from Committee Māori with regards to engagement. My question is, engagement with iwi and Māori concerning fresh water. My question is, at what point are staff going to seek direction from Committee Māori with regards to fresh water and iwi?
Through you, Chair, you recall that's on the work programme for Committee Māori and it's coming back to the next Committee Māori meeting, if I recall rightly. So that was in the Committee Māori work programme to do that, and will be on the next one if my recollection is correct in terms of your work programme.
Sure. So yeah, I'm just concerned that it says on here that staff are finalising that strategy currently. I think that's a bit premature without certainly staff haven't sought direction from Committee Māori.
Yes, absolutely, and it's finalising to present to councillors, should be how it is written. So it's finalising it for it then to be approved through council.
Right. Anybody else? Would appear not. So do you want anything to add, Fiona or Sarah, before I put the recommendation? No. So can I have a resolution that we receive the COVID-19 Essential Services Emergency Response?
Happy to move.
I'll move, Mr. Chair. I'll second him.
Happily, that's Councillor Nees and Councillor Rose. I take it all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next agenda item, Fiona, is, if I can get to my run sheet. No, I was the one ahead of myself. No, Economic Recovery Plan, 9.2. So Fiona, have we got Ngāmuta, Debbie Highland, Annika and Kataraina?
Yes, through you, Chair, we have, and Glenn Clark, and he will do this presentation I referred to in the essential services, where our GIS team has been supporting the recovery and the GEC, and we've actually extended that GIS system to help with recovery work. This is on your supplementary agenda on page 13, so it's on the separate agenda document that was provided to you. And staff do have a presentation, so I'll hand over to Ngāmuta to lead the staff in regards to this agenda item.
Doug, can I ask, when you do say 9.2 or whatever, that you actually give a page number? Because it is helpful to try and find out where we're up to.
Yes, I'll endeavour to do that. I'm still trying to find my way through 2 different screens myself, but anyway, carry on. We've got a presentation.
Morena councillors, can you hear me? Morena councillors, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm very pleased. Ngāmuta Potasi, General Manager of Strategy and Science, and with me in support in terms of being able to address and answer questions. Fiona's already highlighted key staff here. We've got General Manager Chris Ingle of Integrated Catchments, Annika Lane, who's our Acting Regional Development Manager, Kataraina O'Brien, who is our Kotahitanga Manager, Glenn Clark, and our Geospatial Team Leader, and Debbie Highland as well. So just in terms of, I'm very excited to be presenting our economic recovery approach. So just in terms of a bit of background, you'll all understand we are in an absolutely unprecedented situation at the moment. Shamwabil Jacob Ekwab, who is a preeminent economist, has called it our 1 in 100-year event. We have not seen anything like this in the last 100 years, and it has had a massive impact, which I'll talk about shortly. But as well as an impact, there is a key opportunity here for us to work across the region to strengthen our regional councils, to strengthen the region's position nationally, to look at supporting and growing the Maori economy, to transition to a low carbon economy, and ultimately to enhance the prosperity and well-being of our region. So in terms of the current situation, and I'll refer to Appendix A of your agenda, which has more of the highlights of an initial impact assessments which we've undertaken. This is a slide which just highlights some of the impacts that we're seeing, and most of them you will be familiar with in terms of the initial hit in the forestry sector, with our borders closing, the impact that that's having on our tourism and hospitality sectors, particularly in Rotorua and Taupo. With the level 4 restrictions, the big impact that's occurring in our food and beverage industry. Our airlines, you'll note, have seen a huge drop in their operating processes, down 90%. Retail down 50 to 60% across New Zealand, so huge wide economic impacts. We will note the ongoing demand and impact for our primary products, which is great, and we have seen some pipeline issues initially. These are some of the economic ramifications and implications that we're seeing across our region. In terms of impact, now we've seen some unemployment. Now this is projected to spike in a second wave, and you would have seen the Treasury report, which included a number of scenarios which looked at across New Zealand potentially unemployment ranging from 13% to 26%. 13% it equates to 300,000 jobs. So we are talking a massive amount of impact on our industry. We've flagged here, there'll be particular emphasis on impacts on Māori trusts and businesses, forestry and tourism, as I mentioned previously. The impact is also being predicted to hit our small and medium-sized businesses in particular. So when we think about recovery, it's always good to reflect on lessons learned from other experiences. So we're very fortunate to have Tim Hurdle, who is the Director of Pioneer Blue on our Bay of Connections Leadership Group. and he has provided some key lessons for us to take forward. And I'll just pick out a few, and most of them you'll be aware of, in terms of the world has changed and this is our new norm. This meeting is a prime example of how we are changing with this new norm to operate in a different way. Businesses will look at operating in a different way. Their demand for floor space and office space will be different, and that will have an on-flow impact on other parts of our economy. Travel patterns, you'll notice, obviously changed as well. Another key thing I'll highlight is good decisions take time. During times like this, there is often pressure to make decisions quickly, but one of the lessons learned that was shared with us is that good decisions take time and they will last longer. Building and maintaining partnerships is absolutely critical, and I'll be talking about this very shortly as well. And obviously the importance of our staff and looking out for our people. So in terms of our economic recovery approach, we have taken an immediate focused our attention on economic stimulus, and as a result of that, the shovel-ready projects. So in order to be able to do that, it's led to us developing a proposed regional recovery plan framework, and this part of this framework looks at developing a regional recovery plan, which will be done collaboratively with our partners, our key stakeholders, and members of the community. So in terms of that economic recovery plan framework, I'll draw your attention to the key outcome. So this key outcome is about a vibrant, connected region that has recovered quickly and well. Now this aligns really well with our vibrant region community outcome. As part of this framework, we are looking at those three key areas of surviving and helping businesses and communities survive, looking at driving economic stimulus, and in particular focus on that increased employment, and then finally looking at thriving and building a vibrant region. I'll draw your attention to the bottom of the screen, which talks about principles and how we're going to be operating. We're proposing, again, partnerships being absolutely fundamental to our success, decisive leadership being future focused, having clear communications. Obviously, this is our new norm, and good decision making is good decisions taking time to make. In terms of the areas of key focus, I've mentioned before that we have been very, very focused immediately on economic stimulus and what that looks like, and I'll talk a bit about that shortly. Other key focus area as part of this economic recovery plan framework is looking at the development of a regional plan with our key partners. So I wanted to emphasise that this framework is not a regional recovery plan in itself. It is a plan to make a plan which will be unified through a collaborative process involving everyone in our region. We will be continuing to support our sub-regions with their priorities and their projects. What we're trying to do is connect the dots at a regional level to set us up for the future. Other key areas I wanted to highlight were the key opportunities, and again I'll be touching on some of these as we move through. But when we look at employment in terms of us looking at where we can have the biggest impact by looking to progress projects that will be able to employ the most people quickly. And I'll be talking about employment shortly as well. Maori economic development in particular, we had that comment earlier. This is a key opportunity area. We've already started working with iwi and Maori businesses and our economic development agencies in order to help identify further opportunities which we were wanting to progress. Similarly, we're doing the same with our social sector too. I did want to touch on data and information because this is going to be critical to understanding the impact. Across New Zealand at the moment, we have a shortage of real-time information. So we are pulling information together from a number of different sources, from MBIE, from MSD, Toi EDA and Priority One are working on their surveys to gather business intel and information. We are going to have a presentation shortly from Glenn, who's going to explain what we've done in relation to GIS and the opportunities there. Looking at our other opportunities, our key focus areas, we've got our domestic markets, and our key opportunities here relate to we live in a region which is well endowed with a lot of natural resources and some good infrastructure with a port. So our food basket is one of our key opportunities, along with domestic tourism. The other key opportunity I did want to flag was transitioning to a low carbon economy. And you'll recall this is building on our climate change declaration work and the work from Bay of Connections. So just to reinforce as well, collaboration is absolutely going to be critical in the development of that regional economic recovery plan. And we plan to do that with all of those organisations and agencies listed below. Now I'm going to step through each of the phases. So survive, we've had a paper earlier today on our essential services and what we're doing in that space. And you'll note there are a number of them in which we're doing. In addition to that, you'll also recall the last council meeting, councillors unanimously voted for a 0% general rates increase, which we are progressing the work on now, which will look to be confirmed in a June council meeting. I won't dwell on those because we've had a paper already on this space. In terms of now in the next 6 months, economic stimulus has been our focus. You'll recall, and we are seeking as part of this paper your approval for those Crown infrastructure projects which were lodged on Tuesday. And for Regional Council, those Crown infrastructure projects were the Rangataiki Floodway Capital Works improvements and the Rangataiki Tarawera Flood Protection Scheme, which looks at a project which would employ approximately provide for 50 jobs. The Flood Protection Resilience Projects, which goes across 4 rivers, and that would look to employ 80 people. And the modernising of Bay of Plenty's agricultural drainage network, which again would look to employ a number of people in the machine operator, planting and fencing space. So in addition to those Crown infrastructure projects, we are also seeking your approval, your endorsement of the Rangiuru Business Park Public Infrastructure Project as well, which was lodged by the Western Bay of Plenty District Council, which looks to employ potentially 1,500 people. In addition to this, we are also looking at our own green work projects. So these are projects that would provide employment, but also have a substantial amount of environmental co-benefits. And for us, these key areas which we're focused on are wetland development, predator control, regional parks and track creations. Now, we're wanting to build up this green project list because we are working with central government organisations who have flagged that there is more funding coming on stream and will be available. So in order to build up that list, we have an Maori economic recovery work stream where we are looking to work with iwi, Maori economic development agencies, Maori businesses to look at what other potential opportunities we can get to add to that list, in addition to the social sector. We also have our Regional Transport Committee, as mentioned earlier by Councillor Thurston, Chairman of the Regional Transport Committee. We are looking at helping our TAs. Some of the requirements for central government funding mean that some roading projects need to be in the Regional Land Transport Plan. In order to get into the Regional Transport Plan, they need to go through a variation which will come through the Regional Transport Committee, and we are looking to do this at the next upcoming meeting in early May. We've also got a list of our public transport projects, and these range from things that we would like to see from a public transport space. We've fed into our Western Bay Economic Stimulus Package work as well, which has gone through to the MHUD, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. And another key component of this, I've mentioned before, this phase of work driving economic stimulus, is the development of a regional recovery plan, which will be done in collaboration with our partners and key stakeholders. And just to note that it's important that this regional recovery plan is based on good information and data, which I've talked about previously in terms of all of the work that we're undertaking at the moment to gather that data and information, including commissioning separate pieces of work to help us understand the impacts. In terms of thriving and what that looks like in the year plus period, the 6 months plus period, we're looking at the implementation of the recovery plan. We're looking at leveraging our competitive advantages. I've mentioned before the importance of looking at transitioning to a low carbon economy and using some of the lessons we have now in order to do that, and looking at a plan to develop that, focusing on those key opportunity areas of being a food basket, domestic tourism, and multi-economic development. So just in summary, unique opportunity for us now to take some big steps forward. Collaboration is absolutely going to be key. with our partners, with our key stakeholders, with our communities. Māori are a key player in the future of the economy and will play a critical role in recovery. And I've mentioned before, community input will be absolutely imperative to us. So just in summary, our plan is to make a plan, and the regional plan will need to be developed as a region in collaboration and based on good information. So I'll pass now over to Glenn before we come back to the resolutions, if that's okay.
Just before you do, Namuta, there's a range of questions here. So I'll start with Councillor von Dadelsson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you say, Namuta, there is a new paradigm. It's not business as usual. We're in very exceptional times, and I've been thinking about the best way we can, as a regional council, help this recovery. So, you know, I'm fully support what you're saying with regards to the river schemes, etc. That work, no problem there. But I think we need to go further. And go hard, go strong. And I'm going to suggest that we look to re-establishing an infrastructure fund, or call it what you like we had previously out of money that came from the port dividends, and that we set up an infrastructure fund that is contestable, but it's using special dividends from the port, say $20 million, to be spread equally and fairly based on ratepayer numbers throughout the district, so that every council gets an opportunity to have their share of that 20 million, if that's, or whatever the figure comes out as. We've got the ability to do this. And I think that is a much better. We don't want to be running businesses, managing businesses, but we can actually kickstart this by actually giving a meaningful injection into local government for specific project work. But so that it does have to be contestable, but it is evenly spread. That's my view. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor von Dadelsson. That's a nice idea, but it's currently not part of the strategy that we are working to. And if you want that elevated to consideration of the rest of the councillors, then we can do that at the appropriate time.
Well, Mr. Chair, this is an economic recovery plan that has been put up that needs to be and I think it should be included in that. That's what I'm saying. So I'm wanting its inclusion in the recovery plan for staff to at least go away and work on, come back with a response to that. I'm not. This is exactly where it should be brought up, in my view, because it is.
Councillor, you can raise the issue here in terms of the idea, but as you know, we are well down the track of a financial strategy review, and any consideration of the proposal you suggested in terms of revisiting an infrastructure fund proposal is complex. I'm not saying the council shouldn't consider it, but today's not the idea, or it's not the time to actually make policy on who can do that. So if you want that considered, then we can do it in the fullness of time. Councillor Thompson.
3 points, if I may, and thank staff for the presentation, very good. Certainly it's my understanding that when we set up the scope for the review of our financial strategy, our regional infrastructure policy would certainly be a part of that. And so when we get on to the discussions later on in our meeting around the financial positioning, I think we need to discuss that then. 2 issues that occur to me. One is a food basket's a wonderful idea and it needs water. So I would hope that, following on from the long forgotten Auckland report, that some work is being given, or some thinking is being given to water storage throughout the region, and in terms of how we are actually going to make sure that food baskets are going to be sustainable given the need for water. So that's my first point. Longer term thinking maybe, but I think we need to be starting the work on it. The other thing is around my concerns around employment and the training / retraining of people to be able to take up employment opportunities. Easy to say, but not so easy to do. And I would just urge us to take learnings from the Auckland Chamber of Commerce and Toi EDA, who both have quite inspirational work, training and retraining schemes. And I'll just give you one example. I think freight and logistics is going to certainly feature across the Bay of Plenty, and you're going to need drivers and driver training, and of course Toi EDA has been well placed in that space. But I really urge us to work, or maybe talk with the Auckland Chamber of Commerce in and around initiatives that they've had for years around employment, training and retraining. And my only other question, Muta, is who has replaced Bex?
So through the chair, we've got a few answers to those questions, but in relation to the person who's replaced Rebecca, we are in the recruitment phase at the moment. We have Annika Lane here as well, who's the Acting Regional Development Manager. In relation to employment and the comments there about absolutely connecting with the EDAs on this, because obviously a key avenue through there. We're also with MBIE, who've got their regional skills leadership groups which were on hold, and they're just waiting direction from the Minister in terms of what's happening in that space. We are also looking, now that we have all of the Crown infrastructure project information, one of the steps we're looking at is seeing if we can map all that information, and particularly understanding the skills across the region, working with MSD, to then look at identifying those unemployment areas across the region and the skills associated, so that then we'll be able to visually see where those key gaps are in employment and skills, and where those key opportunities are in terms of projects, so that that can be a more direct match. So that's one of the things we're working on at the moment.
Thank you, Namuta. Councillor White.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Namuta, for the efforts you guys are putting into the recovery plan. I just put out a little message on chat, the elephant in the room is meaningful participation by Marty in the recovery plan. And I say that because obviously your preamble says a high unemployment spike. We all know that Marty are going to be heavily hit in that space. And I'm sort of, my issue, my challenge back, I guess, is in that participation. And I'm aware on the front line what's happening with Māori in that space and the things that are happening. I'm aware we've got the economic development agencies out there, but I'm also aware that Māori representation on those EDAs and others is not strong at all. And I really have a concern around how the capacity to understand Māori thinking in that space and Māori involvement is going to evolve. And I know from my own experiences here in my Okure constituency that we're working hard with our EDA to focus on the terms of reference, to focus on the membership, to focus on ensuring that our people have actually participation across the sectors. Because, let me be blunt here, they trust in corporations across sectors. They're involved in kiwi fruit, they're involved in forestry, tourism, and all those other primary sectors as well. So we can be involved and should be involved in that space. But also, how does this fit in terms of the value propositions of our people moving forward into the medium long-term resolutions for transformational change? It is not business as usual, because we go back to that and we use that same framework, our people will continue to suffer and be where they are, in fact get worse. So I'm actually putting up front, where is that participation in meaningful ways? These words on paper are nice, but I'm aware right now that the participation is lacking in real terms. And I'm aware of the Bay of Plenty Connect's work. I'm also aware of Toi Kairawa, which is another group that's emerged, that's actually focusing across the region on Māori regional economic recovery. And I just want to know, is that linkage happening? And is that participation happening to a degree beyond what's on the paper here? That's my opening remark.
Yep, absolutely. And I know Kataraina is here and she's leading out our economic work stream. Did you want to comment, Kataraina?
I'll just get my video started in case you want to see me. It's all right if you don't. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Kia ora, a tēnā koutou katoa, nā kai kaunihira. Toimoana. This is Kataraina. So this is a new workstream lead position that I have. What I have been doing, and thank you so much, Councillor White, the comments and feedback that you have made are things that we've been thinking very carefully about and having conversations with some Māori in different roles, Māori entities, Māori in businesses, iwi entities, iwi trusts. So what I have been doing is trying to touch base and connect and get a bit of an environmental and economic scan of the region first and foremost. And I have noticed that there are some opportunities for more strengthened Māori participation in different entities. So you're quite right. That is work in progress, and I will be definitely seeking advice from our Māori councillors. Kia ora.
Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Crosby now, seeing it's coming up to 10:30.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair Namuta. Thank you for that presentation. I think the framework is solid. My commentary and observation would be, in the first instance, the risk around duplication in terms of what the regional council may do versus our TLAs. And I know you were talking about collaboration. I'd like to see a concept there about planning regionally but acting locally. Nobody knows their communities better than the local community. So within that framework, when you start to develop the more detail, the concept of lead agency versus support agency, I think would be helpful in avoiding one, conflict, and two, duplication, but overall support the basic framework moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Crosby. Councillor Nees.
Thank you, and I just want to thank staff and commend them for the work that they've done in pretty short order, and also the calibre of the work pulling together some really good advice from a large number of sources. My question is, while I'm absolutely delighted to see the opportunity recognised of moving to a low carbon economy, I'm just wondering how that fits in with the previous recommendation we received from Bay of Connections to develop a regional transitions plan to a low carbon economy. So is this going to be the beginning of that thinking, and then we will move on to a full development of a plan once we're well out of this thrive part of our plan? So my question is essentially, is this consuming that recommendation from Bay of Connections, or will we be expecting further work on a transitions plan to a low carbon economy, which is a much bigger, much longer project?
So through the chair, this is absolutely the seed of the start of that work. So absolutely.
Thank you, Namuta. So Councillor Rose, then Councillor Eighties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff, for a very in-depth report and presentation. Very well done. I guess I've got a couple of comments, and to start with, I just wanted to talk about the politics in high schools, because it has been said through a number of people that due to the increase in unemployment, there will be an increase in signing up to courses through local polytechs and universities. So my first question there would be, what has our regional council staff done in regards of thinking of ideas with how we can work with the Polytech and the University of Waikato? My second point is, I see in your presentation you mentioned rangatahi in schools and working with them, but for myself that's just seeing the words. Now I want to actually see that happen, because I've seen that there has been a lack of that over a certain period of time. So all I want to say is, I just think that we need to take the rangatahi and the high schools and those younger generations a bit more seriously. especially in these times where we're focusing on moving forward, and actually figuring out what these young people actually have to say and what they actually want in the future. Because for myself, I sit here and I go, if we're thinking future based, we need to think about our rangatahi, and we need to think about those who are going to come after us. So again, my only question there was, what's the plan in the way of politics and universities and working with them for this financial, or working within this financial plan?
So through the chair, just 2 key points on that space. We've been working with our key partners in relation to looking at employment pathways for youth. So we've been working with a number of parties in relation to looking at that space. In relation to working with youth and universities, they are another key stakeholder which we'll be looking to work with in the development of our regional recovery plan.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eighties.
Kia ora, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I can see Councillor McDonald raising her hand, but you may not be able to see her, Chair, doing that, and so if she could also go on the list.
Yeah, Councillor McDonald, I can see all the hands up on my screen. Your one's not showing here, so if you want to go to the bottom of your screen, there's a raise your hand button. I think you just need to push that, because I can see everybody else's, but yours is not highlighted.
Okay.
It's still not there.
Not there? I'm running out of buttons.
I think it's, ask Yvonne to tell you where it is. I think it's at the bottom of the right hand. One of the councillors will tell you. Anyway, I'll come back to you, Matty Moana. So,
you
Councillor
have to
Eaton.
highlight participants first.
If it's on an iPad, it's actually in the top right. If it's on a PC, it's in a different place. So depends what.
Okay, I think I've got the. Okay.
Did you go to more, Stuart?
If you're using the council iPad, it's actually on the top right where there's a number of little dots. Just push those and the hand signals drop down.
Okay. Do you got that, Matty Moana?
Yeah, I've got the participants button, so I'll push that.
Next door to that, there's on my iPad, there's 3 dots, and currently my one's got 8 written on it. So if you hit those 3 dots, you should come up with some options.
Okay.
Anyway, Councillor Eighties, continue.
Ka pai. Kia ora, Chair. I've got a couple of points, and I am cognizant that this report has been prepared in short order, but I would like to echo Councillor White's concerns with regards to Maori participation in the economic recovery, iwi participation in the economic recovery. Because as I read it, and if I give you genuine feedback, it feels like a bit of window dressing. All the words are there, but how this actually happens, and I appreciate Kataraina gave a response. But if we're honest with ourselves, our track record with regards to participation, partnering, and building that partnering isn't fantastic. And for me, it is actually reflected in recommendation 5, which I'll indicate now I'd like to make an amendment to when we come to pass the recommendations, where iwi partners have been put there with stakeholders. I believe that needs to be separated out. Also, where implications for Māori on page 20. I understand that staff have made the assumption that iwi have been under undue pressure due to COVID and putting up checkpoints and delivering kai packages to whānau in communities. And I understand that, but all the iwi leadership that I've spoken to are absolutely wanting to participate in the economic recovery. So putting that in the paragraph that we have refrained from engagement and an engagement process with iwi due to undue pressure, for me reads as a bit patronising and paternalistic. Iwi that I have seen participate getting the work done on the ground can do both. And I think that is just, I really just want us to be careful as we head into this economic recovery, saying things like being shovel ready, that we take two steps backwards from the work that we have done so far this triennium with regards to building partnership with iwi, that we continue on that good work and that we do get in early. And that is on in action, not in words. I just, as constituency, Maori constituency councillors, and there's 3 of us and we have all discussed this, we have a duty to ensure and to advocate for Maori in this space, that there aren't just pretty words and that these are followed through. So we certainly want to, so far, since we've gone into lockdown, I myself, and I've spoken to the other Maori constituency councillors, we haven't been engaged with by staff on how to go about this. And that is concerning to me as we head down this path. So that's my first point, and that I do have an amendment I'd like to make to those recommendations. My second point is around social procurement. As we head into the space and there's going to be a lot of money dished out in this work, I'd like us to think about, do we have a social procurement policy in our procurement process? I think if we have a policy when we put out the RFPs or the requests for proposals and bids for this work, if we have, I know this will take a while to develop a policy like this, but if we have it when some of these bigger companies are putting in bids for the work, if we have a paragraph or some sort of policy around social procurement, that making sure that that trickle down happens. I'm cognizant of what Councillor Crosby said, where acting locally is really important. So making sure that everybody gets a fair share of the pie. And I think one way to ensure that we do that is to work on some sort of social procurement policy. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Eaty. Councillor Brunning, then Councillor Thurston, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, congratulations on the drainage infrastructure proposal. My question around that at this stage is that it involves a lot of landowners, council and private landowners. So just how are we communicating with those people? We put the proposal up, but a lot of them won't even know about it. So just thinking about what the communication strategy with those landowners would be. I then want to pass on to the Katikati issues, and Doug and I had an email yesterday from Katikati Iritara managers, etc., with about 3 proposals that they are putting forward. I think they have been working with the district council, but just wondering whether they can be incorporated, or have they been considered yet as to what status they might have in our applications to central government, and are we working with Western Bay District Council over that? The other one is the Katikati bypass, and I know that will probably just pass to the Regional Land Transport Committee, but I just want to remind staff and councillors that that is a project that's been around for a long, long time, that it has, as I understand it, the land has been purchased It's really just a design and put out well, get consents and put out for contract, could be done in 6 months. So I just want to emphasise that there is a project that's probably not too far away from being shovel ready. And the other question I have is rural fibre optic availability.
So to Chris to talk about the initial proposal.
Yeah, I can cover those first two, Councillor Brunning. In terms of working with Western Bay District Council, the modernising of the agricultural drainage schemes in the region was developed in conjunction with Western Bay District Council. In terms of socialising that with individual landowners, we haven't done that yet. So this was all developed very quickly on the hoof. So that would be the next stage. So yes, we'll have to do that. I understand the proposal is for the scheme drains that the regional council manages, though, rather than the feeder drains that are on private land or farmland. So I'm not sure, though, that whether the regional council actually owns all that land or not. The next question was about the proposal from the Katikati group. We were actually aware of that, so it did surprise us a little that it went in through yourself and the chairman. But yeah, with one of our land management officers, Braden Rowson, has been working on that with Laurie Donald for some time. So yes, that's one of the on the list for our green groups, green projects. And in fact, we will be following this meeting, and depending on what direction the council gives us, we're quite ready to go out to other harbour care groups and that sort of thing to see whether they also have projects around Tauranga Harbour and other parts of the region where we can do some work and create employment in conjunction and partnership with those groups.
Thank you. Happy, Councillor Brunning? Councillor Thurston.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add my congratulations to staff and everyone who's worked tirelessly to put all this together. But for fear of sounding a little bit political, I'd like to speak as a constituency rep for Rotorua and say that I personally am totally committed to the regional recovery plan, and I think the strapline of a vibrant, connected region that has recovered quickly and well sits very comfortably with me, and I imagine a lot of others. But I just want us to always keep front of mind as to what this impact has been to Rotorua in particular. It has been significantly impacted. You know, 60% of domestic tourists come to Rotorua, and it's 25% of the workforce here. And tourism here has taken a massive hit, particularly in food and beverage. And I'd also ask us not to forget the primary and rural industry here in this district, because they've become incredibly resilient, as we know, in recent years because of the effects of some of the policies that have been implemented. But I just urge us to, here is a golden opportunity to work closely with our TLAs and build positive, meaningful relationships. And in particular, I urge us to work closely with RLC. But the last comment I'd like to make, I'd like to just support Councillor Thompson and echo her calls that whilst there's a lot of talk about people needing to reinvent themselves, it's a hell of a lot easier said than done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. Just as a matter of interest, Councillor Thurston, if you get the opportunity to read the LGNZ financial impact analysis, I was quite surprised to see Rotorua in terms of impact for tourism was about number 4 or 5 on the list, which surprised me. I don't know whether they made a mistake there or not in terms of that analysis or not, but Councillor McDonald and then Councillor Clark.
Morning, everybody. I've got to say my hand's a bit tired. I've been up waving, but obviously I haven't got technology sorted yet for you to have seen me waving. So I'm going to actually backtrack because I had a couple of questions for the...
Councillor McDonald. Councillor McDonald.
Unmute Marty Moana.
Councillor McDonald.
Monitoring reports, and I was just wanting to know whether staff will be coming to us
Mati
with a
Moana. Mati Moana.
Yes. Yep.
You muted yourself there for a period, so could you start from your opening kōrero?
Okay. Just to say that I'm going to backtrack back to the first report, because obviously you didn't see my hand up, but I know staff are present, and also Fiona will probably be able to answer me. And I just want to ask a couple of questions from that report. And my first one was around our essential services and whether we will be able to get a report around the state of the environment. I'd be interested to see what kind of, not so much impact, I guess, but what kind of benefits we've seen to the environment during the lockdown with the reduction, and I guess in humans being on the landscape. So I'll be quite keen to see, you know, how are the rivers, how are our streams holding up? Are there changes to the quality of the water of those streams, and some of the eco-habitats? Just some of the, whether we're starting to see positive changes as a result of the lockdown. My other question around that report, if I can remember, was around, I can't remember. I'm going to come to the economic recovery. I'm going to support what the previous Maori councillors have said, and while I've been sitting listening to everybody, I guess my thoughts would be really about how we move forward. Now, we all recognise that there needs to be obvious changes. In the Māori space, I see, I believe we've been a bit slow coming forward in that space and how we could have reacted, I guess, a lot quicker around the stimulus packaging that was done by our three councils. However, it's done, and I want to acknowledge that the suggestion has been made to bring Bay Connections on board. However, I want to say that not only Bay Connections, and more importantly, I think we need to have Toi Kairoa involved in that space. And the reasons I say that is that they have been working across the whole region now in that Māori space. And I think out of ourselves, including ourselves, Regional Council, if we bring them on board to help us populate those areas where we have gaps, we have lackings, that the work that they have done and continue to do will be of benefit for us in identifying a pathway forward and bringing the Māori perspective into the recovery plan that we are looking to develop. I know that they work within the three Māori constituencies, so they're actually aware of the specific issues that sit within the three regions. So therefore they also have the capability to look across the region, taking into consideration what is happening on the ground in those three constituencies. And this is where I see the value of them coming into our space and they're helping us to navigate the whole Māori recovery and economic space. The other value that I think they will bring to the table for us is that in speaking, you heard the other councillors speaking, we've all been speaking to the Māori players in the space within our own constituencies. And one of the things that appears to be coming through loud and clear is that there is no regional body that brings all those entities together. And this, I see the value of Toi Kairoa Trust having a role in doing that as well. So I think, you know, while we speak about Bay Connections, I think that's fine, but I think it's more crucial for the Māori space that Toi Kairoa Trust comes aboard with us to help us navigate that space more effectively.
Absolutely. through the chair, if I could just add, we've had a number of meetings with Whina, who heads up Toi Kaiara Rawa, including, I think Kataraina's got a meeting later today as well.
Thank you. Councillor Clark. Mr. Clark, you're still there. And whilst he's waiting, I would take it that Councillor Rose and Councillor Thompson just haven't deleted your hands up, or do you want to speak again?
Right. Am I back in there now?
There you go. Yes, you're back with us.
Thank you very much. You know, first, congratulations to Chris Engel and the team on the initiatives, the two Rangataiki initiatives, the drainage ones. I think will bring a lot of relief. The initiatives around the retirement fencing back off our drainage schemes is going to be of huge impact if we can get that off the ground. So look forward to asking lots of questions in that space. But on a higher level term, as we move into this, I'm aware that there are sensitivities around the TLAs and ourselves around leadership going forward in the Bay of Plenty. And whilst we talk about collaboration and partnership, I think we have to look at ourselves closely and to make sure that we are in fact partners and not tend to dominate the schemes and give, as Stuart said before, the TLAs their head in that space. So sensitive to that. I'd like to have some discussions, but in the meantime, Chris, I'd like to keep in touch with you around how we progress these drainage schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. So I see we do not have any further people wanting to make commentary. So we'll move through to the recommendations, and I'm sitting on a comment from Councillor Eighties that you would like to seek a change in terms of item 5. So is it wordsmithing, Councillor Eighties, or a fundamental change to the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's pulling iwi partners out of there, basically. And making a different recommendation for engagement with iwi partners. I think that agreeing to seek expressions of interest from iwi partners and community stakeholders on other green projects just indicates that it puts iwi partners just in that space around green projects. It may feel like semantics, but I think it's quite important, as was indicated by the presentations, that they are central in their own right and not to confuse them with community stakeholders. So I would like to pull, just take iwi partners out, agrees to seek expressions of interest from community stakeholders on other green projects. And then maybe it's a recommendation 8, that we agree to seek direction from Committee Maori on how best to partner with and engage with iwi with regards to regional economic recovery. That is my suggestion.
Could I seek the advice of the Chief Executive, because I think we need to remember that Committee Māori can offer advice, but it's the council that makes the final decision.
I agree with that. It's just in the terms of reference of Committee Māori to give direction to staff with regards to engagement with iwi. So not to make a decision, but to give direction on how we engage. I just think that considering the comments from the 3 Māori constituency councillors on this report, that we need to be working closer with staff on how this progresses, just because it is incumbent upon us as constituency councillors to the Māori constituency that we get this right. It is actually my intention is for the betterment of this organisation that we are all on the same page. That's why I'm putting this forward.
Okay, thanks you, Councillor Eighties. Fiona.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, comfortable with those changes to those recommendations. And I think that's entirely within the delegations of Council. Clearly, the Regional Recovery Plan, recommendation 8, will current recommendation 7 will report back to full Council.
Okay, so for clarity, we are shifting recommendation 7 to number 8, and we'll add in a 7 that says that what staff seek the advice from Maori constituency councillors or committee Maori in terms of way we should be engaging with iwi.
Through you, Chair, the notes I've taken from Councillor Eighties' comments is for recommendation 5 to remove iwi partners, so it reads agree to seek expressions of interest from community stakeholders on other green projects. That there is a new recommendation 8 that's agree to seek direction from committee Māori on how best to engage with Māori and iwi on the regional recovery.
Right, happy with that. Is everybody happy with the recommendations as spoken to by the Chief Executive? So with those 2 changes, so that's take out iwi partners in subset 5 and add in the last one that Fiona's just read. Do I have Councillor Neves?
Have a point of clarification, please, Mr. Chair. I just wouldn't like there to be unintended consequences from that change to 5, and I just want to get confirmation that the fact that iwi partners have been taken out of that recommendation for being approached for input, that will still happen under the umbrella that they are also community stakeholders. I wouldn't like staff to take that and to mean that we are not talking to Maori about potential green project.
That's noted, Councillor Neves, and I think in all that we do, it's implied that we treat our Māori partners in every consideration that we make in terms of these recommendations. So I'm personally pretty relaxed about it. See, we've got a question from Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, I just want to support what Councillor Toy has proposed, and I think it's really it's acknowledging in the first instance that we acknowledge that iwi are not a stakeholder in what we do. So I think the separation helps to clarify that. So that's why I'm supporting it. So it's still keeping the agreeing to liaise with Māori, to work with Māori, but to take it out of the I guess out of the box that looks as though we're categorizing them in the stakeholder box. And I think this is something, if we start to correct what we're putting in our reports, then it starts to correct the way that we act. So I think it's crucial that we do it in our reports and in the way we intend to work together moving forward. So it's really just correcting the way that we're working.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDonald. So, Councillor Eaty, you prepared to move?
Yes, I am, Chair.
I second.
Second, Councillor White. Councillor White. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Now let me see if I find my way out of this thing here. Run sheet. So, Namuta, have we dealt with yours, haven't we?
Yes, we have. I just note that we'll try and provide the GIS information in a different way or format, perhaps via video or some other avenue.
Okay, so according to my run sheet here, the next agenda item is 9.3, COVID-19, Rotorua District 1920 quarter four rates deferral. So main agenda, page 27. Is that right, Fiona? Or Yvonne, that's where we are?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct, Chair. And Matt can talk briefly to this report and then we can answer your questions.
Morena, Councillors and Chairman. So this report is following a decision by Rotorua Lakes Council approving a rates postponement initiative at their 3rd of April meeting. And as the Chair said, it relates to the 4th quarter instalment for the 2019-20 rates. So Rotorua Lakes Council collect rates on our behalf, and this initiative doesn't automatically apply to the regional council rates without a decision that's being taken. So as it's set out in the report, is administratively difficult and potentially confusing to our ratepayers if the rates collection against the agent operating two different sets of rules and policies. So if the agent is trying to collect rates on their behalf in one way and on our behalf in another way, as I said, that could be potentially administratively difficult. So we sought legal advice and incorporated that within the report to ensure the Bay of Plenty Regional Council follows the correct procedure. And should you decide to agree to apply that same initiative following the recommendations as they're set out in the report, will do so. So staff recommend that agreeing to the postponement initiative is the practical way forward in the time that we have available to allow that May instalment to be postponed. So nothing to add to the report, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Happy to move, Chair. Councillor Thurston.
It's moved by Councillor Thurston. I see a question from Councillor Winters, then Nees, then Von Duddleston.
Yeah, happy to second, Mr. Chairman, but also a question, Matt, on resolution number 6. And I'm probably being a bit pedantic here, but I just want to make sure we've got ourselves covered. The recommendation 6 agrees that Rotor RLC may agree to remit any penalties incurred by ratepayers who are entitled to rates postponement under this initiative. The word may worries me, because under RMA and all that sort of thing, if you may do something, you can or cannot do it. But shouldn't that word be agrees that RLC and us, we will remit penalties incurred by ratepayers who are entitled to rates postponement under the initiative? Because I don't want to see ratepayers having their rates postponed and then find out at the 11th hour, oh, you will be getting penalties on the rates that have been postponed. So can you clarify that for me, Matt, in terms of the wording? Is the word may strong enough?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman. So the reason why the word may is in there is to give flexibility to Rotorua Lakes Council as they deal with each case and each item as it presents itself from individual ratepayers. So as you quite rightly point out, the intention is to remit those penalties, but if you force that as you will always remit penalties, there may be circumstances, in very rare circumstances, where penalties are appropriate. It's not intended to apply them, but using the word may means the flexibility is there rather than saying yes or no. So may is, as I said, gives that flexibility to Rotorua Lakes Council to apply them.
So subsequent question, Matt, if we pass this today, we will be remitting our penalties. If it's passed by RLC, we will remit penalties on rates postponed.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, we will be following the practice of Rotorua Lakes Council for rates postponement and remitting penalties.
Okay, cool, good.
Thank you. Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Just following on from Kevin's question, we follow Rotorua Lakes policies and accept their decisions on remission. So there is a possibility, is there, that they could remit the whole of the rates payment, not just the interest penalties?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chairman, so Rotorua Lakes Council will have the flexibility to decide on a case-by-case basis on the circumstances of the ratepayer, and they're just working through their criteria now based on the government's criteria. So this will become clearer in the new financial year because these will be postponed into 2021, and then whatever the Rotorua Lakes Council policies and procedures will be, we will follow that. So, as I said, to make it administratively simple and also to make it clear to our ratepayers.
Thank you. Councillor Von Duddleston.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this course of action, but I do have real concerns about it. I don't think we have any alternative but to support it, but deferring rates till 2021 means that they're going to get a double hit in 2021, and you know, I'm not sure that that's the right solution at all. So, you know, we're caught in the fact that we do rely on them to collect our rates at this time. I think this should be a wake-up call for us to look at solutions to alleviate that. But in the meantime, you yes, I think we must support this, but with a lot of caution going around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brunning.
Yes, how can we be assure Rotorua that this is a one-off and we won't be considering this again?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, the only information we have from Rotorua Lakes Council so far is that they're just considering the 1920 postponement. I'm sure they'll be considering that, as we will be doing when we have deliberations on our annual plan for 2021. But at the moment, the only resolutions they've passed is relation to 1920.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Eighties, then Councillor McDonald.
I'd actually just like to support Councillor Van Dalton on his corridor around building debt within households, because it's not just deferring rates, but there will be many households who will be taking mortgage holidays, and that debt does build up. And if we look at future quarters, we're really unsure about when the economy will be heading out of the situation that we're in. And so, yeah, I'm with Councillor Van Dalton around showing concern about building too much household debt through these decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Eighties. Councillor McDonald.
Yes, I share the view of Councillors Van Dalton and Eighties. And I also want to raise the comments that made by staff, and that in our rate remission policies, we need to be a lot more flexible and to think a lot more outside the box around payments, and not, not focus so much on, and I know it's our job, but around the revenue. And I know it's a reality, but I also think we need to think about the constituents, our constituents at this time, and hence I'd have no issue really in supporting what the Rotorua Council is doing, although I did raise some concern when it first crossed our table about the financial impact. But, just really focusing on the report that council staff gave, and it sort of came home about when they did mention about us being more thoughtful around the flexibility around rate remission.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Nees, are you still there, or have you gone? Councillor Brunning, you've had your question, haven't you? Yep. Okay, I've had the resolution on page
28.
28 moved and seconded. So if there's no further discussion, just check that. No further discussion, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. So that takes us to public excluded. So I'm going to move that we go into public excluded. I have a seconder.
I'll second.
Second, Councillor Rose. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. So councillors, I'm going to give you a 5-minute break. And then we will reconvene in terms of the first agenda item here is Quayside Holdings. And note that when we reconvene in 5 minutes' time, that live streaming and recording will not take place. Is that right, Yvonne and Fiona?
That is correct.
Great. We'll see you. It's now 11:01. We'll see you all at 11:06 sharp. Thank you.